Excellent. I do miss flying. Anyway, so let's go through some of these that you shared. Who wants to share some of their thoughts on this? Who's been typing away in here? Don't forget to unmute yourself, of course. Anybody who wants to speak out, take us through your thoughts.
Okay.
Go for it.
No, it's on you, Neil. Go ahead.
Ladies first.
Oh, that's so sweet. God bless you. Okay, so not allowing for empowerment, not allowing for constant growth due to lack of engagement, because a lack of encouragement, because like when we're in a meeting and it's too time constrained, like I have to go, I have to meet with the PO, or I have to meet with this person. You can't say like, you know what, I also need to tell you like, you're doing a great job. I know your mom is in the hospital, you know, and that goes over to the transparency. You know, we're not engaging in a valuable manner where we're saying like, you know what, I need like, you know, the afternoon because of XYZ. I feel like people are feeling like they're at home. So, you know, running to the doctor is not as a priority as it would be if you were running from the office, because we all love a run from the office, right? So I feel like all of these are in conjunction and they matter because people, like you said, are being less human because now we have turned into robots in our homes versus like, you know, oh, I'm gonna watch The View before my daily stand up, or, you know, like you're not just like relaxing anymore. You know, humans aren't chilling. They're just like, you know, robotics. So
yeah, we're not allowing for that space in between, right? Which I think is
yeah,
very
and I feel like we're losing like transparency from personal matters because like now the manager is not walking over saying like, oh, you know, my dog is in the bed. You know, you can't gauge sadness or happiness anymore, you know, by constant flow of conversation. So moving on, that's one of the main issues. People aren't engaging. They're not having creative thought flows anymore because they're saying like, oh, wait, let me unmute. And by the time you unmute, you've had a chance to like reassess your thought, right? So now it's not as creative or as silly to have that moment of like, oh, no, that doesn't work, you know, and no one's laughing enough, I feel like also. So that is another thing.
I appreciate that, Veronica. Thank you so much. It's really great insight as well. It's like you're not there's no space in between, and we're all got to be shown to be so highly productive that you know we're hyper engaged, and that causes some problems, right? Because we're just going from meeting to meeting. We're not allowing for that human connection. It can be very hard. Thank you for sharing that. And Neil, you said you wanted to have a little chat as well.
Hi there. Yeah. I wanted to pick up on one of the points, which was about the this feeling of needing to be productive, and then almost flipping it around to say, okay, so what do you need to do in order to show that value, to show that you're being productive, and to see that that's being understood, and then also that it may also lead to something, because because it seems like it's connected to this other point, which is people feel that unless they are visible, it's not going to lead to any sort of promotion. And then the flip side of that might be that any sort of promotion might actually be based more on meritocracy rather than just who's been, you know, shouting the loudest. So, but just to go back to the original point, which is then demonstrating this value, demonstrating even efficiency in a remote first world.
Very difficult, right? It's very hard. It's a very big challenge, right? And especially if the way it's measured is important. Is, you know, are we kind of measuring output, like number of things? Are we measuring outcomes, like the value delivered? And that's really hard, because in an organization where the leadership don't understand outcome over output, it can be quite hard to then demonstrate that you're doing the most valuable thing. You might be just doing more things. I was in 5 meetings yesterday. Okay, well, that's really positive. Well, is it? Or could you have been doing more valuable things, right? So there's obviously there's a the challenge there with leadership on how they measure accountability and measure value, measure efficiency. And it's not about, effectively, if you have the same kind of approach from an organizational culture that was pre kind of working from home, like we need to see you visible to make sure you're actually working for us. It's not really focusing on the outcome that they're achieving. It's just focusing on, well, there's a human body sat inside that chair. That must mean they're working for us, even though that human body might not be very happy or may not feel supported. So it is a challenge. Like, how do we actually demonstrate value? Yeah, Neil, you're absolutely right. It's a difficult thing, right? I suppose from a transparency perspective, that kind of carries over as well. Does anybody have any kind of thoughts to share with from a transparency side of things? Anybody else that's in the room?
I added one, which also is linked back to the previous one, which is transparency also of leadership, I think, because there's usually a dynamic, which is you have to be transparent to leadership, and then, but we also want to see, leadership being equally transparent, so we can also align ourselves to the outcomes they want to see.
Yeah, I've seen some interesting patterns in that space where actually just literally making the work visible of the leadership, whether it be a physical Kanban board or some kind of Jira Scrum board for the leadership team, just demonstrating the big chunky items that they're trying to face into, demonstrating the big strategic things they're trying to do, just literally making it visible. It can make a huge difference to the people. Oh, actually, they are listening to us. It doesn't matter if they're kind of escalating and working on their individual item or their individual concern, as long as they can see that. Whereas actually, if it's just ferreted away somewhere and it's just about presentations to them and it's all about kind of like, oh, you do the work and we'll just sort of direct, but without being visible, that connection to the why, that kind of connection to the purpose of the work that you're doing, that can make a huge difference to make sure you feel connected and feel transparent. That's an interesting one. Thank you, Neil. Anybody else in the room got anything on this side of the transparency board they want to share? I'll read through a few more then, I suppose. So not knowing what other people are doing. Sorry, reset there. There's a way to let the chit chat and get buffers between the meeting in order to connect and communicate more information than day-to-day robotic info. Just somebody saying they can't get their mic working there. So yeah, what we want to try and do is make sure that we try and create the space for transparency as well, I suppose, is an important thing. So making sure that we build in those buffers so we can have the non-staccatic kind of chats, the coffee chats, the water cooler chats, the discussions where we can actually connect as humans and go, oh, do you know what? There's that thing I was going to try and talk about. Have you got any ideas on it? Whereas actually, if you're just being run by a calendar and run by Zoom meetings, it can be hard. So, it's difficult to connect with people if you're not seeing their faces. It's difficult to connect to people if you can't talk to them and have the usual kind of banter about stuff. It's difficult to have that. And it's important that we make time for it. Visualizing the workflow is key as well. I suppose that's an important thing. When we're kind of working with Scrum teams, Agile teams, Kanban teams, we have the notion of visualizing the work, right? By creating a board that's visible. And some of those interesting things that come out of that means that you can actually inspect and adapt the process, inspect and adapt the products. You can prioritize work. You can get everyone on the same page. But if you're not really, if we're not really in that space where we're trying to make that visible, and we're passing PowerPoint presentations around, or we're passing Excel documents around of different stuff, then it's really hard to keep sense of the current truth or focus everybody on the same goals. So yeah, making the workflow key and making the work visible, absolutely key tenet of the work we're trying to do, definitely.